On a June Friday night this year, 22-year-old Palestinian suicide bomber Saeed al-Hutari took his life and the lives of 20 Israeli teenagers at the Dolphy, a crowded downtown discotheque on the Tel Aviv boardwalk. Some 120 others were injured. A sacrifice of innocent human life, it was by no means the first, on the altar of bloodletting that has been the tortured history of Israel-Palestine. Tragically, it was not to be the last.
When I opened the radio and I heard the news, and I hear that some Palestinian blow up himself and 20 Israeli people were killed. It makes me feel sorry, it makes me feel maybe anger, but I don't go in the street, I see Palestinian, I hate you, and one Palestinian hate you because you are Palestinian. I don't hate people because of what they are, I hate people for what they do.
It was Jewish philosopher Heschel who said, "Indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself, a silent justification affording evil acceptability in society. But however long it may take, the evil truth will always be out there, waiting to be exposed."
The patient had, amongst other things, been interrogated and tortured by the pouring of boiling water over his chest and genitals. This had resulted in massive burning and blistering of this flesh.
In South Africa, the miracle of transformation did not come cheap. The price of war, decades of witness to violence and death, the evil truth, brutalization of a generation of young South Africans on all sides of the conflict.
Hitting a person, with bricks, with our own hands, cutting a person with a knife. The thing is, we're telling ourselves that that person has done something wrong. So we want him to feel pain before he dies.
Indelible images that shape history. South Africa then, Israel, Palestine now. Carbon copies that resonate. Images defining for all time the essence of a particular struggle and the consequence of rule through the barrel of a gun.
Once the blacks are given any kind of freedom, the days of the white man in South Africa are numbered. To make sure this doesn't happen, all movements of the black man are controlled.
Control, humiliation, and assault on personal dignity. Echoes from a dark South African past, reverberating in the reality of the Middle East today. A bitter legacy, long in the making for future generations of Palestinian and Israeli youth alike.
I was 17 years old when I went into the army. Nothing had prepared me for war, for seeing death. My first night there, helicopters came flying over and they started calling all doctors, please come to the hospital, all the medical personnel, and found myself confronted with a patient way beyond anything I'd ever imagined was possible. Blood everywhere and body parts missing and so on, and something which I had never been prepared for. The way that the team would work is we would pick up a track and we would just follow it and hunt the person like an animal that was at the end of that track until finally you caught up with them and shot them. And that in itself, the excitement of the kill, as it were, and the excitement of not knowing what was coming next, whether somebody was going to shoot at you around the next bush, could go on for 2 or 3 days. And one incident where it did go on for 2 or 3 days, and finally we did catch up with the guy. Found him hiding in a kraal. He wouldn't come out, and we drove over it with a Casper, shot into the rubble and pulled this guy out of that situation. And of course he had holes in him and he had been driven over and so on, and he was handed over to me to patch up. And during the interrogation that was going on, as I was putting in a drip and putting on bandages and so on, out of utter frustration really, my unit commander shot him through the head in cold blood right there in front of me.
My application for amnesty goes to the act of omission, in that I did not prevent the execution and I failed to report this incident to anybody when I got back to base. I think at the time I was disturbed by the incident, but saw it in the light of my answer to Mr. Milan, that it was purely another day on the job.
So you didn't care really whether he died or not? It was part of the
I did
scenario.
care. I did care for a day or two, because it was my patient that had died. My caring was because he was my patient, not because he was a human being.
In fact, he was still the enemy.
Exactly.
The stress that people were under was enormous. The guys that were with me were taking drugs because we were medics and we had access to drugs on a regular basis. The guys were trading drugs for food with the kitchen staff. And we were drinking alcohol at an alarming rate. And during the Christmas sort of New Year week, I think maybe 11 or 15 guys in our immediate camp committed suicide. The sense of sanity was just what was sane and what wasn't sane anymore.
National madness going to your head. National madness, you'd be better off dead.
National Madness portrayed the struggle of a young white conscript against the onslaught of military propaganda.
It's for people who believe in apartheid.
Waar vandaan kom jy?
Grahamstown, Corporal.
En dink jy die kommuniste sal jou nie daarso vang nie?
I'll do it if I have to, Major.
Portraying the systematic brainwashing employed by state security, the play gave expression to the anxiety and confusion experienced by many conscripts at the time.
The country must be defended, Sean.
Why?
The military is non-political.
That's not true.
Sean, there are Cubans in Angola, Sean.
Half the people I meant to fight are South Africans.
There are Koreans in Zimbabwe.
I don't understand.
There is a total onslaught against our nation, Sean.
You are told one set of things. It's actually very hard to believe something else, or you do feel a bit mad because the television, the radio, the newspapers all say X, but yet Y is apparent to you, and then your psyche has been twisted in some way. So yes, I think apartheid was a national madness. I mean, definitely for white society. I would presume that for black people it was, no, I suppose it was just madder, actually, just madder and worse.
For South Africa's black community, the 1990s were arguably the most violent years. Torn apart by internecine political violence, manipulated by an insidious third force intent on destabilizing the forthcoming democratic elections, no one was spared. Not even innocent train commuters. Lawlessness and anarchy prevailed, and township youth, organized into so-called self-defense units, meted out their own brand of street justice.
When I got involved into the whole thing of the politics, I think I was the age of 14, if I'm not mistaken, 13, 14. The whole community at large got involved in the conflict, and people started shooting at each other, or the violence even got into schools, inside schools. People would come inside the school and hack school children with pangas and, with no kiris and all these kind of things. Anytime, any day, you can die. Somehow, when you are a leader, people have to sort of like listen to what you're saying, and when you're a leader, you keep an order of saying, okay, here's a person, they say he has raped someone, he has raped who. Who's that person? We look at the profile of that person, and if I say, kill him, he has to be killed.
The propaganda machine of the day had so convinced white young conscripts that the communist threat was something that we needed to deal with. I had never heard of SWAPO, I'd never heard of the ANC before I went to the army.
Die doel van die R1 geweer is om die vyand dood te maak. Sê dit saam met my. Die doel van die R1 geweer is om die vyand dood te maak.
There was a perversion of, say, of Christianity that was awesome. It was for the first time in the army, I had a sense of evil, and I got it by how Christianity was being perverted from its opposite. It was no longer love your neighbor, it was kill your neighbor if his skin is of a certain color.
I was involved with an organization called Youth for Christ, which was a very integrated organization, and yet the church, the politics, the society in which I lived said that the Swart Gevaar and the communist was a major problem, and I needed to become a man and sign up.
One evening we were driving down one of the tar roads, and a rocket went through our engine, and our Casper came to a halt in the middle of sort of gunfight. And in that situation, you just take your rifle and you shove it out the hole in the side of the Casper and you just shoot. It doesn't matter which direction the person might be in. You just shoot at anything, not even anything that moves, just pull the trigger and hope for the best. And I just remember the noise, the flashes of light, the rockets flying over and under us and so on. It was just a very intense situation, and one where it was as though the world had stopped, and there was just this commotion going on. Once it had all sort of simmered down and finished, I realized that I'd only shot one shot because my rifle had jammed at that point.
I stood on the top of the Casper, totally frustrated that somebody had tried to kill me. Unjammed my rifle and fired a shot into the body of the dead insurgent lying on the tarmac.
As the corpse jumped on the ground, I kind of thought to myself, what have I done? And later that night, I was just ill and vomiting and had diarrhea, and really just got a sense of what I had done. And everybody in the team around me just kind of laughed at me and said, we all went through that, you know, it's just getting used to the thing, you know, you'll get used to it.
In the townships, the bitter harvest continued, the seeds sown in decades past. In 1992 alone, more than 20,000 people were murdered. There were 380,000 reported cases of rape. For Scotch, it was just another violent day, a routine interrogation amidst all this madness that provided a moment of introspection.
Guys used to listen to me, you know, when I say, hey, come on, guys, don't do this, do that. If I said do it, you know, just like that. But that day that I put the person in that safe place, and suddenly he was beaten up. In some of those incidences, I was there, and I was just making sure that don't kill him, but can beat him up. And suddenly, that person in the morning, someone came to knock early in the morning at about 3 in the morning. The guys who were in guard said to me, "You know what? You are called in the office." And something, one thing which came inside me, knock inside my chest, which said, "No, the guy is dead." And then when I went there and found that the guy really is dead, and you know the way he was tied up, you know, it's like we tied him up. This one hand coming to the other leg, and this other hand, you know, coming to the other leg. It's just the way he was, you know, it was just so bad that when I looked at him, you know, lying there, I just thought like, you know, I think these things are going a bit too far, you know, and it's like I'm going too far, I'm going too fast.
Area in which one operated was one of, at times, quite thick bush and thorn trees. The tying of a body which would, in 40+ degrees heat, bloat in the sun and be ripped at by thorns was a very intimidating factor on the local population. To have something like that drive up to your house and say, tell me where somebody is, otherwise this is going to happen to you. The fact that I never used it as an intimidation factor, in that I never went to somebody's house to say, tell me, but I was there, I was part of it, and I was helping to do that, for me constitutes something for which I need to be forgiven.
In The Shadow of Violent Past, which is a play based on a courtroom formula, in other words, a tribunal formula of a judge and people who come forward, was inspired by the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa. We thought it would be a very good vehicle for raising the whole issue of human rights abuses that go on in a very legalized way in Israel. We used actors, both Arab and Jewish, as well as people who had really been victims of torture and administrative detention and a whole slew of abuses like this. I have a friend who was a senior officer in the GSS, the General Security Services, who are the people who do all the torture and things like this. And he came to the play, and afterwards he was so angry. I don't think he knew that it was based on him, but he said to me, if really this is the way you see things, you shouldn't be in this country. You don't realize the holy work that we do to stop these people killing you and your children. And he was foaming at the mouth. Literally, I've never seen anybody foam at the mouth. He foamed at the mouth. And I realized that two things. One, that we had hit home, and secondly, that a very, very long process will be required before Israelis can face the fact that they too, as well as the Palestinians and the terrorists, have done things that perpetuate the situation, that create the hostility, that creates the terrorist attacks, and that in a sense is really the acts that are really destroying our society from within.
דבר כזה, הייתה הוראה של שר הביטחון, הוראה מפורשת, זה לשבור ידיים ורגליים. זה אז תקופה שממש לא ידעו איך לאכול את הסיפור הזה, לשבור ידיים, ממש לשבור להם את הידיים ואת הידיים, בעיקר שלא יכולו לזרוק אבנים כאילו להרתיע. שוב, אני רוצה להבין, זה אירוע שקרה פעם אחת באופן חריג ובמקרה הצלם תפס את זה, או... מה פתאום? זה נורמה, זה היה נורמה של... זה דבר יום-יום.
On the 15th of May 1948, the State of Israel was born. Existing Palestine was partitioned, 78% for Israel and 22% consisting of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank for the Palestinians, demarcated by the so-called Green Line. In the process, some 700,000 Palestinians fled their homes to become refugees. In June 1967, Israel invaded both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, in the course of its celebrated Six-Day War against Egypt, Syria and Jordan. 34 years later, Israel has never withdrawn, but has established settlements, 16 in the Gaza Strip and 145 in the West Bank. These settlements, central to the current bloodshed, for the Palestinians are concrete manifestation of occupation and oppression, and for the settlers, testimony to their quasi-religious sense of entitlement.
This land is holy. It's holy for the Muslim, it's holy for us, and it's holy for the Christians. And land, if you want to get it, you have to fight for it. And it's not for money. The fight here is not for oil, it's not for diamonds, it's not for, we don't have anything here. Even water we don't have. If you are strong here, you will survive. If not, you find yourself in the sea. This is my promised land. God didn't promise me Canada. If He promised me Canada, I would take it with two hands, but He promised me this land. There is no solution here. There is no solution. So look at the tanks. I guess it's going to the line between the Jews and the Arabs. Battlefield here, no border.
It was a bare land with rocks and with no grass, no trees. All the trees that you see here are planted by us, watered with love. We came to a neglected land and we settled on it. In 67, in 6 days, to fight 3 different armies against 3 different, and to win in 6 days, that was a miracle. We got it as a present from God. God is here to stay and to protect us, and the faster the Arabs will accept it, the less blood it will shed. The solution will be that we will have Jewish leadership that will have the courage to stand up and say it belongs to us, all of it, and no Arab that does not accept our ruling can stay here.
In response to the suicide bomb at the Tel Aviv Dolphy discotheque the week before, the settler community held a mass rally in the center of Jerusalem, calling on the Israeli government to launch a full-scale war in retaliation.
We are too humane to our enemies. You know what? Even before sending the army, just cut their supply of water, supply of electricity, and close their roads. In a week, they've got no food.
In stark contrast, women in black, with a joint statement by Israelis and Palestinians side by side, we refuse to be enemies. The inevitable scuffle as right-wing extremist group Kach, loaded guns at their side and shouting racist slogans, attempt to mutilate the banners. With solidarity vigils held simultaneously in 150 countries worldwide, women in black have been nominated for this year's Nobel Peace Prize. Marking the 34th anniversary of Israel's invasion of the Palestinian territories, this vigil, attended by some 3,000 Israeli peace activists, calls for an end to the occupation with total evacuation of the 161 settlements in the Gaza Strip and West Bank. The establishment of the State of Palestine alongside the State of Israel, according to the original Green Line borders, with Jerusalem the shared capital of the 2 states.
There is a relatively small group of settlers who live in the occupied territories. And it happens now that the whole Israeli public or the whole Israeli citizens have to fight the war of the settlers because they are not willing to move, because they want to be there with any cost. We have to pay the price.
As you walk around Western Jerusalem, you see that it's all apartments. People live here very tightly. If you go out to a settlement, you live in a villa for a quarter of the cost of one of these crummy little apartments. And you have a yard and you have a garden. And how many people want to leave that? And it costs you very, very little. Each settler costs the government over 1 million shekel a year. They just allocated 3 billion shekel to beef up the bus security and to even make their homes more secure. So people in Israel are not happy about this. Most people will tell you that the settlers are getting a fantastic free ride and the rest of us are, in what they call in Israel, suckers.
Controlling the movement of Palestinians is a full-time occupation. Checkpoints or mahsoms are everywhere. From age 18, every young Israeli man and woman is conscripted. To record human rights abuses, a group of 30 self-appointed Israeli women, the Mahsom Watch, monitor the checkpoints. Their presence both a public statement of opposition to the occupation and a means of discouraging the potential for abuse and humiliation.
Our being there at the checkpoint is a very visible statement that there is not a consensus on this occupation, that many Israelis are totally opposed to it. We're opposed to it for what it does, first of all, selfishly, what it does to us. The rate of husbands battering wives is tremendously high here. The research on prejudice in young children and racism is astounding. Children by the age of 6 will tell you that they hate Arabs, the Arabs smell, the best Arab is a dead Arab. All of these things are becoming part of our culture. And this is part of being an occupying force. So that in order to occupy other people and to subjugate them and to humiliate them, you have to tell yourself that you're better, that you're different than they are. And this is what we're doing now. 50-odd years after the Second World War, after we should have learned a very different lesson.
By being Jewish, it's really hard for me to see how Jews, after what they had gone through in Europe during the Second World War, what terrible things they're doing to other people, and this feeling that we are, this knowledge that we are strong and we are controlling and we have this big strong army, which is for some reason called the defense army, but is in fact the army of occupation and the army of attacks and the army of violence.
Now, in Israeli schools, the level of violence is one of the highest in the world. And you have those Ministry of Education stickers everywhere. We fight violence. At the same time, Israeli forces, bombing Gaza and Ramallah. That's not violence, you see, because this is universally seen as some sort of, self-defense. You're defending yourself against an unarmed civilian population with helicopters and bombs. That's self-defense. And they say they're against violence. And doing this, they also educate their children in the schools to be good soldiers, first and foremost. A school measures its success in Israel before anything else by the amount of people it sent to the army. Just like that. Above all other values, it values military service, which is not a value at all if we look at it rationally.
I've had soldiers say, "It's good you're here." I've had soldiers say the most terrible things. I've had a soldier say to me, "We hate you worse than we hate the Arabs because you've put it into the Arabs' heads that they have rights."
This morning when we arrived, there were two border patrol soldiers and 3 Palestinian men. They stopped them to check their IDs. They told them, "Go and stand over there with your face to the wall," which is, first of all, useless. There is no need to do that, and incredibly humiliating. And this is also what I see at the checkpoints, that almost all of it is not about security. They don't really check. What they do is that they're performing this almost ritual of control and humiliation.
Their soldiers will tell you that the whole thing is a farce. It is supposed to be for security. We saw how people pass with no one checking. Unfortunately, I think the purpose is simply to exert control and to let the Palestinians know that they can't move without our say-so.
Traveling the West Bank, Palestinians are barred from using the main highways and must use alternative and generally untarred routes.
Main road from Hebron to Bethlehem is just 20 minutes maximum. But now by this we have to choose, this way because it's forbidden for us to use the main road. Just it's left for the settlers and for the Israelis.
Palestinian tour guide Hijazi Ayed. Having traveled the 1.5-hour dirt road from Bethlehem, for Palestinians, further passage and backdoor entrance to Hebron is blockaded by mounds of concrete and rubble. This is closure, tightening of the military siege on virtually every Palestinian town and village, a means of collective punishment against the total Palestinian civilian population. At strategic points, for the sake of Israeli settler security, plantations across the West Bank, the bread and butter of Palestinian families, have been uprooted.
Closure is, is the killing of the daily life of Palestinians. They divided each town, each village, each camp from each other. So they blocked it by tons of rebels, and they just like a person in a jail. They just looked at anytime they want. All my dreams, I was dreaming in a lot of things to do in tourism, but like I see my dream like a snow house melted by this crazy situation that we still live in. I can say it's irrational, really, treatment against us. They don't want to see anybody of Palestinians to live in this country. They don't want to see any Palestinian raise his voice. Really, I get cried for that. Because you know this man, I know him, by the way, he's from my village. And he is going, by the way, twice a week to the hospital to clean his kidneys. You say that a very miserable and a tragedy, scene for that man. His sons, carried him and they couldn't carry him, he couldn't walk. So it's just a simple part from our daily suffering from these, plagues from this occupation.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Nobody can understand for what is this? For what is this? All these blocks, all these, closures, for what?
Hebron, ancient and bloodied city, the Ibrahimi Mosque and tomb of Abraham, stained with the blood of 29 Palestinian worshippers gunned down by an Israeli settler in 1994. In the main Shuhada Street, a 24-hour vigil for 10-month-old Israeli settler baby, Shalvet Pas, shot and killed in her father's arms by a Palestinian sniper in March this year. Friction and conflict occur on a daily basis, with a group of some 500 Israeli settlers, protected by Israeli security forces, effectively holding hostage some 140,000 Palestinian civilians living in Hebron under 24-hour curfew. The hostility is tangible, whether in settler graffiti on Palestinian storefronts or the attitude of automatic weapons slung with defiant impunity.
We don't hate Israelis because they are Jews or because they are Christians, because they are Israelis. We just hate the violence. We just refuse the occupation. We don't agree for that. That's all.
In Hebron, there is 41 houses occupied by the army. The rooftop they are using like a military post. So these families that all the time they live under shooting in this house, under curfew, no school. Do you think it's normal situation? The people, they all the time watching the TV for shooting and killing. Funeral, blood, shelling, killing, all of these things, it affects the youth. They live in jail, in their private home. No school, no computer, no beach, no club, no library. Just in front of them, block doors, soldiers, settlers, curfew, closure. It's damaged situation.
You can feel them. You can know their frustration. They are good people. They do not all of them take part in the violence, and they just want to work, to study, to grow like every young man. And in a lot of ways, they cannot do it.
We are able to have a lot of dialogue with soldiers. Unfortunately, we're not able to have dialogue with the settlers. They don't want to talk to us, but the soldiers tell us they don't like being here, they're trained for war, and they're sent here to do police work, which they're not trained for. The Palestinians don't want them here. The settlers feel that they're not doing enough. And as one soldier said to me, everybody hates us here.
They don't like us. They're shooting us and throwing stones and things like that. They don't like it. They don't like us much. I can't let my emotions to control my work. My work is only to guide the Jews, not the Jewish citizen, nothing else. My order is not to kill anyone. My order is not to hurt anyone. Period.
War is a young man's game. older people in war find it difficult to adapt themselves. I found the young South African soldiers very, very adaptable and excellent soldiers. We were surprised. We could put them in the most difficult situations and they could handle the war.
One older person said to me, Scotch, yeah, you are the ones who are supposed to fight now because of you've got no house, you've got no babies, you've got no wife, you just have a girlfriend, or girlfriends. So, it's good for you to fight because you lose anything. You lose nothing. And that time I accepted, said, yeah, you're right. You've got babies and stuff. But after this whole things, when I sat down and I tried to understand what's going on into my life, he was very wrong. He was totally, totally wrong. Because sometimes, somewhere, I'm not saying that, we're used, but somewhere, somehow, sometimes, we are so easily, we are targets. We are easy targets to use, to do this kind of conflicts.
Yesh Guval, there is a border, referring to the 1967 Green Line, embraces the stand taken by some 200 young Israeli men and women who have, since the September Uprising, or Intifada, refused to serve the Israeli Defense Force in the occupied territories. 19 have thus far been imprisoned for taking this stand. Conscientious objector, Moran Cohen.
אני חושבת שזה טעות חמורה לפגוע באזרחים בתוך הקו הירוק. זה לא נכון, לא טקטית, לא אסטרטגית ולא מוסרית. אני חושבת שההרגשה הייתה מאוד קשה אחרי הפיגוע. עם זאת, אני לא חושבת הפיגוע לא גרם לי לשנות את עמדותיי כהוא זה, הוא רק ממשיך להוכיח את צדקתי. כל עוד אנחנו נכבוש, אז תהיה התנגדות לכיבוש. ועצם ההתנגדות בצורה מהותית היא צודקת. אני חושבת שזה לא נכון לפגוע אבל באזרחים משום צד.
You can say that you live in a new Middle East, that you just want to live peaceful. And the army is change you inside, and it make you more violent. It's true. You do your dirty work. That's the army. But you can't ignore all the things. You can't tell I'm living in a new Middle East and I don't need to go to the army.
As young people in this country, we were all brainwashed, being told that we're really, there's a stranger out there who's the Arab who wants to kill us or at least get us into the ocean. And when you hear that as a kid for about 18 years, you come to believe it. Nowadays, I think it's easier because there are more voices that are going against this brainwash. So more and more people are becoming aware that it is possible not to serve in the army, and it's not a stain on your history if you don't.
The sentiments of conscientious objection, opposition to oppression through institutionalized militarization of society. Israel today, South Africa in the dark days of the 1980s. The End Conscription Campaign, one of many opposition support organizations that evolved in the 1980s. The thin end of the wedge, an important component of the irreversible momentum generated through mobilization of non-violent opposition to apartheid oppression, organized across racial barriers, finding common ground in the principles of universal human rights. Significant too in Israel-Palestine today, solidarity across racial lines as side by side with their bare hands, Jewish and Arab activists dismantle blockades and mobilize relief convoys, bringing food and supplies to besieged Palestinian villages. Non-violent opposition across racial boundaries, a crucial step towards breaking the cycle of violence and revenge.
Thou shalt love the Lord thy God, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Thou shalt not put him in a township. Thou shalt not force him to carry a pass. Thou shalt not shoot down his children. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
Gaza city skyline. Its airport closed, port embargoed, and border with Egypt blockaded, the Gaza Strip is under total military siege. subject to economic strangulation. According to British relief agency Oxfam, 64% of Palestinian households now live below the poverty datum line. 74% meet the criteria for United Nations emergency food assistance. And for those fortunate enough to be economically active, subjugation through the daily humiliation of control and assault on personal dignity.
It's the concept of guilty until proven innocent, whereby people are pulled over on the road or stopped in the street to be searched.
It doesn't matter you are businessman or you are politician or you are artist or you are Palestinians. Always as Palestinian for them, they try to degrade you, to humiliate you. And the worse, they want you to accept this kind of humiliation as normal.
It's a very difficult process. For us to leave the Gaza Strip is now virtually impossible as a family. So we've actually never traveled together outside of Gaza. 8 days before the Intifada broke out, we invested in a home in Ramallah. That home Qasim has never seen. Qasim literally cannot get out to see his own home now. We're renters here in Gaza. We're planning to move.
So like you are living here in Gaza and maybe also our colleagues in West Bank. Gaza's worse because it's like big jail. I think the most valuable thing for human life, the dignity. What I'm asking for, I'm asking simple thing. I want to be a free human being like any other human being in the world. That's it. And this is the big problem for us as Palestinians. So everything you're talking about, business, prestige, power, it's not important for me if I don't have my dignity.
Subjugation, hopelessness, and despair. Conditions that spawn the suicide bomber. The retrieval of dignity and self-immolation against the oppressor. To the Palestinians, martyrs, and to the Israelis, terrorists.
הצבא הישראלי נמצא בתוך השטחים הכבושים גם בשביל לכאורה למנוע התקפות על ישראל, והיום יותר מזה בשביל להגן על ההתנחלויות. ובעצם זה שהוא נמצא שם, עצם קיומו בשטח, כבר הוא כיבוש גם אם עדיין לא מדובר על התעללויות והשפלות ומכות במחסומים או במקומות אחרים. עצם קיומו של חייל ישראלי בתוך פלסטין היא הכיבוש.
I think the thing that I lost the most was my humanness, my ability to feel emotion, my ability to love, my ability to be a father, to be a husband. Subsequently, I've been to see a couple of the guys that were with me, and many of them are still living within those dreams, still living within those nightmares.
The callous shooting of 12-year-old Mohammed al-Dora by Israeli security forces has become internationally the defining image of the brutality and tragic loss of youthful life taking place in Israel-Palestine almost daily. For Mohammed's father, mother, 2 sisters and 4 brothers, this image is both a haunting assurance that Mohammed will never be forgotten as well as a living nightmare. Shown repeatedly every day on Palestinian television, together with other emotionally charged musical video compilations of Israeli military brutality against Palestinian civilians, the cumulative effect of this propaganda onslaught on today's generation of Palestinian youth, only the future will tell.
Everyone heard about Muhammad that he killed, he got sad. Of course he got sad. Because he was sincerely, he was lovely of all of the people here. The bombing and the shooting rocket and shooting the innocent child mean no, they didn't want peace. Of course I hate them. I want to be a Palestinian soldier. All Palestinian youth is like me. because we are suffering here in Gaza.
Mohammed al-Dora, enduring image of the senseless spilling of innocent blood, begs the question, when will visionary leadership of sufficient integrity and strength of character emerge on both sides of the Israel-Palestine crisis to stop the slaughter and implement a just and lasting peace?
She was a little thing. She was tiny and very delicate and modest. She had this kind of modesty about her that I admired. I don't know, a perfect little girl, you see, who danced and this is it. She was lovely.
Her name was Smadar, which means in Hebrew the first flower that comes out of the plant.
I don't know, I adored her from the day she was born. She was her quiet and her serenity and her wisdom. But there's not much to tell about such a little girl. She was learning all the time. She was wide-eyed all the time. She was grasping things.
I don't have any feelings for the perpetrator, as you call it. He's a victim just like myself. I have great anger to the leaders of those two people that lead us to blood and murder in a circle that never ends of terror and retaliation, and they don't have the courage to do what is necessary.
I blamed then, and I am blaming now, the government of Israel, the policy of Israel, the occupation. Yeah. I think they are the creator of the Hamas. They are the creator of the suicide bombers.
There is no figure which people can look up to and believe in. Not in the Palestinian side, not in the Israeli side. There is no such a political leader with a vision, with understanding the needs and the pains of both sides, because each side ignores completely the suffering of the other side.
I don't think that anything should demand the blood of a child. Nothing. And I think that people who say this is the price for peace are liars, and they don't understand the meaning of peace. This is the price of war.
Arik was 19.5-year-old. He was in the Israeli army, and he was kidnapped and murdered by the Hamas terrorists. And it was on the 7th of July 1994. Many people are asking me, what about forgiveness? And I say, there is no forgiveness. I'm not ready to forgive, never. Bring me my son back, I will forgive you. But I'm ready to make reconciliation, to open a new page. I lost Arik because there is no peace. And what I'm doing is to establish peace between us and the Palestinians. For Arik, I cannot do nothing. It's only for my other kids who are living that I can do. I've established a group of, today it's over 190 bereaved Israeli families who have lost a member in the family, and a group of over 140 Palestinian bereaved families. All of us have lost a kid because there is no peace, and we are not looking for revenge. What we are doing is to try to find a reconciliation between both nations, the Israelis and the Palestinians. Palestinians want peace, they want to live, they want to have education, they want to have economy, exactly like the Israelis. And there is no reason not to establish peace between us and the Palestinians. It's not a question if the peace will come. The question is how much more blood and how much more dead will be in our street, in the Palestinian street, till we will achieve the peace. There is no question, the peace is going to be, because we are living one inside the other. And there is no other way, only the peace way.
I will use all my strength to help bring about peace, democracy, justice for all in our country.
In South Africa, part of the factors which really brought us to the point of taking initiatives which nobody ever expected from us, part of that was, on the one hand, the acceptance that we had to change because we were on the wrong road. The second aspect was to realize that no solution could be found through the barrel of a gun.
Well, I have a great respect for the Israeli defense capability. They are pretty strong, there's no doubt about it. I feel the same about ours in 1985. But the real solution is not the military one. There is no doubt in my mind that the sooner there is a solution within the state of Israel with the Palestinian situation, the better for themselves and for the Palestinians. Because war has a very bad effect on people. It hardens their attitudes. After making more war, sometimes you have to sit around the table and you have to face each other and say, now look here, how do we solve this thing now? And then with the hardened attitudes, it becomes more and more difficult to really find a solution.
The military leaders said to us as a cabinet, look, 80% of the responsibility for bringing to an end these conflicts lies on the shoulders of the politicians. We can only create time and space for you to do so.
If people ask me what would I regret as retired general, I would say by not applying more pressure on the government to bring about changes that would solve the conflict sooner than what we have solved it. And maybe that's another mistake that the State of Israel can do by stretching out the conflict over such a long period because you're militarily strong. But actually, you are losing strategic alternatives in the final solution.
What do we do with youth? We were an incredibly militarized society on both sides of the fence. I think we have failed those people. We've not integrated them properly into our societies. We've not given them opportunities in which they can fashion themselves to be responsible members of our society. And I think we're seeing the consequences of that. Young people who are unemployed, who take into crime. The other thing that we never taught them is how do you adjust from a war situation into living in an ordinary society where the use of a weapon is something which shouldn't be tolerated.
Brutalized by his experiences as a self-defense unit commander, after years of searching, Scotch finally found healing through professional counseling and a primal wilderness trail experience. By his own admission, Scotch was one of the more fortunate, and today runs a wilderness therapy operation for community members who have suffered trauma in the course of their daily lives.
The mountain on its own is like, moving in a steepy places, and those steepy places, I'm not used to it, and so like thinking that what if I fall here? When I fall here, I'm going to die down there, really die. So I got so afraid that I asked myself, I wondered, that time when I used to carry a gun, and that time when I used to lead this crowd, and that time when I used to, shoot and all these things, can I take that power and use it here? And find that I can't, so it's like just nature itself with its own powers just taught me that here you are, now where's that power? We try to deal with the human mind, try to go deep inside to yourself and trying to see inside yourself and try to understand yourself, who you are, where you come from, and where are you going.
For me, the committee found that the occupation of Namibia, the establishment of Kufut, and the war in Angola were violations of human rights. And for me, I participated in that. I have found healing in this process. I have found healing in making a submission. I have found healing in going before the medical sector hearings, and today constitutes the last few words in the paragraph and a full stop for me. And for me, I want to, when I'm 65 years old, look back and say, I closed that chapter in 2000 and I got on with the rest of my life. And so I really ask for forgiveness for the role that I played. And it sounds grand in a sense, but the role that I played in defending the policies of apartheid, in occupying Namibia, in waging war against Angola, in participating in a Kufut unit, because those things were wrong and those things were violations of the basic human rights of many of those people.
It's heartening to know that you are one of very few people in this country who are prepared to face your past. I know it's not going to be easy to forget what you did. And it's easier said than done to close a chapter in one's life. But at least you came here to bare your soul. And important to say you're sorry. On behalf of the committee, we wish you well in future. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. There isn't a single South African family that hasn't fought on every single side, whether those are conscripts who were in Angola or Namibia, or whether those were guys that were involved in township conflicts or faction fighting, or whatever the turmoil of our history has been. There isn't a single family in this country that hasn't been through that. And the devastation that that brings in terms of lawlessness, in terms of crime, in terms of abuse, a nation of fathers who don't know how to love, that don't know how to care, a generation of mothers that have had to deal with what's happened to their partners. We're going to, for many, many years, reap the tragedy of that.
I can't really say, I'm finally healed. I think it's a kind of a process. Each time I come to the wilderness, I learn. Each time, even if I've been coming here for a lot of time, but each time I come, new stuff. Each time I come, new stuff. I just learn more, more about life, more about myself. My heart, my life, my inner self is more freer than it was. And I think if I didn't get this kind of help, I don't think that I would be still alive now because of the life which I was living. I think I was too much fast. So I think I'm healed, and I'm still also in the process of that.